The blue tide. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet. We like to think we've mapped it, quantified it, and understood its ecosystems. We tell ourselves that the deepest trenches hide nothing more than blind fish, crushing pressures, and hydrothermal vents. But the SCP Foundation knows better. The ocean isn't just an ecosystem. It is a hiding place. And sometimes what hides beneath the waves doesn't want to stay there. On an ordinary night off the coast of Papua New Guinea, 3 commercial fishing vessels vanished from radar. There were no distress signals, no weather anomalies, no shifting tectonic plates. When a Foundation recovery team arrived at the last known coordinates, they found no wreckage afloat. They found no survivors clinging to debris. Instead, they found a sea that looked like shattered glass, reflecting a sky that wasn't there. The water was thick, viscous, and glowing with a brilliant, mesmerizing cobalt blue light. When they hauled up the remnants of one ship's hull, the solid steel didn't look broken. It looked melted. It looked eaten. And 14 kilometers away, drifting in a life vest, they found Captain Elias Morin. He was delirious, his eyes wide, staring down into the dark water. Before he died, he repeated a phrase that would haunt the researchers of Marine Research Site 12 for years to come. The ocean was glowing, then the fish started screaming. Today, we dive deep into the classified file of SCP-9613, codenamed the Blue Tide, a Keter-class anomaly that turns the very building blocks of life into a weapon, and one that threatens to bring about an irreversible ecological collapse. To understand how dangerous an anomaly is, you only need to look at how the Foundation is forced to contain it. SCP-9613 cannot be kept in a standard reinforced concrete cell. It cannot be contained by titanium plates, bulletproof glass, or carbon fiber meshes. If you put it in a conventional vault, it will walk through the walls in minutes. Instead, SCP-9613 is locked inside Biocontainment Sector 12 at Marine Research Site 12. The primary containment chamber consists of a colossal, triple-layered pyrite reservoir with a total capacity of 180,000 liters. Every single pipe, drain, observation window, and internal support structure that comes into contact with the anomaly must be coated with a compressed pyrite laminate no thinner than 8 centimeters. For those unfamiliar with geology, pyrite is iron disulfide. We know it more commonly as fool's gold. It is a relatively common brassy yellow mineral. To a common miner, it's worthless. To the SCP Foundation, it is the only barrier standing between humanity and total annihilation. For reasons researchers still do not fully comprehend, the anomaly refuses to spread across, dissolve, or chemically alter pyrite in any measurable way. It is its only physical boundary. Because of this, the rules inside Sector 12 are absolute. No metallic material of any kind, except pyrite, is permitted within 15 meters of an active culture. If a guard brings a standard steel sidearm too close, or if a technician drops a titanium wrench near the containment threshold, the results are catastrophic. When personnel enter the chamber for routine maintenance or testing, they don't wear standard hazmat gear. They wear heavy, UV-resistant suits equipped with integrated blacklight emitters calibrated precisely to 395 nanometers. These emitters cast a dim, purple glow over the workers at all times. The containment protocols state explicitly, any malfunction in the blacklight equipment is grounds for immediate, unconditional evacuation. You do not wait for a backup light. You run. Because if the light goes out, the tide rises. But what happens when the pyrite cracks? What happens when human error or an external strike compromises the triple-layered reservoir? If SCP-9613 breaches primary containment, the site doesn't trigger a standard lockdown. It initiates Site Protocol, Black Tide. It is a set of procedures born out of desperation, requiring actions that seem entirely counterintuitive to standard containment logic. First, all standard lights within the affected sectors are immediately disabled. The facility goes completely dark. This isn't to hide, it's to ensure absolute optical contrast. In the pitch black, the anomalous blue glow of the SCP stands out like a beacon, preventing it from hiding in shadows or blending into white fluorescent glare. Second, mobile ultraviolet flood units are deployed immediately. These aren't small flashlights. These are industrial-grade UV arrays designed to bathe entire corridors in high-intensity black light. Third, the Foundation does something unthinkable. They activate the ventilation systems and intentionally aerosolize a red stage variant of the anomaly, known as SCP-9613-R, pumping it directly into the infected sectors. They flood their own facility with a secondary anomalous culture, turning their hallways into a biological battleground. And finally, there is the grim reality of the organic cost. Any living organism, be it a lab rat, a D-class personnel, or a senior lead researcher, exhibiting signs of infection is to be terminated on site. There are no medical bays for the infected. There are no quarantine periods. There is no cure. The protocol states clearly, no attempt is to be made to recover infected organisms unless explicitly authorized by Level 4 personnel. If your colleague, your friend, or your commander gets a drop of the blue tide on their skin, they are already gone. And if you try to save them, you will join them. Because of the anomaly's extreme attraction to marine ecosystems, all coastal and open ocean testing has been indefinitely suspended following the catastrophic events of Incident 9613-7. The Foundation has pulled back to land, terrified of what might happen if this entity truly breaks free into the global current. So what exactly is SCP-9613? On paper, it is described as a rapidly reproducing species of anomalous bioluminescent algae. It displays a vivid, unforgettable cobalt blue coloration. It is completely odorless, and it is horrifyingly adaptable, thriving equally in freezing saltwater and stagnant freshwater environments. Its exponential growth rate completely surpasses any known terrestrial organism. If left unchecked in an open environment, a single cell could theoretically cover a square mile of ocean surface in a matter of days. But it isn't just its growth rate that makes it a Keter-class nightmare. It's what it eats. SCP-9613 consumes and metabolizes nearly all known inorganic and synthetic materials upon contact. Think about that for a second. Concrete, plastics, ceramics, glass, titanium, and high-grade military steel, materials we use to build our civilization, our fortresses, and our ships, are nothing more than food to this algae. It doesn't just erode them over years. It breaks them down chemically on contact, utilizing the raw elements to fuel its own frantic duplication. And as we mentioned before, the sole confirmed exception to this rule is pyrite. For some reason, the molecular structure of fool's gold acts as an absolute repellent. The algae cannot digest it, cannot spread across it, and cannot alter it. It is an island of safety in a sea of consumption. But if its interaction with inorganic material is destructive, its interaction with organic matter is pure cosmic horror. The algae emits low-frequency bioluminescent pulses. These aren't random flashes. They are rhythmic, hypnotic, and calculated. Foundation behaviorists have noted that these pulses mimic the exact frequencies used by deep-sea predatory lures, like the anglerfish, but on a massive systemic scale. It is calling to things. It wants to be found. And once SCP-9613 makes direct contact with organic tissue, a process called fusion begins immediately. The file notes this in a single chilling sentence. This fusion is irreversible. Within approximately 30 seconds of exposure, the algae infiltrates the host organism at a cellular level. It doesn't act like a virus that reproduces inside a cell until it bursts. Instead, it systematically replaces the host's connective tissues, musculature, and portions of the central nervous system, with its own algae-derived biomass. The subject doesn't die. That is the true horror of the blue tide. The host remains biologically alive. Their heart may still beat, their lungs may still pump, but their mind is completely gone, overridden entirely by the collective consciousness of the algae. When a living creature is overtaken by SCP-9613, it ceases to be an animal or a human. It becomes an extension of the tide. The Foundation has cataloged a terrifying list of anomalous properties exhibited by these infected entities. First, they display extreme, unprovoked aggression toward any non-infected organisms. A docile creature will become a relentless predator. A human will become a feral monster, attacking with no regard for self-preservation. Second, their biological capabilities are amplified to an impossible degree. They possess rapid, near-instantaneous tissue regeneration. If an infected entity loses a limb, the blue biomass simply weaves itself back together in seconds. Their physical strength is enhanced far beyond human limits, driven by the rigid, unnaturally dense algal structures replacing their muscles. But perhaps the most baffling and terrifying trait is their ability to partially liquefy. An infected entity can alter its physical density at will, allowing it to pass through solid materials, slithering through narrow pipes, under locked doors, or through floor drainage systems, even if those drains have been completely sealed and welded shut. Because of this fluidic, shifting biology, they possess a complete immunity to conventional ballistic weaponry. You cannot shoot an infected entity. A bullet simply passes through the blue sludge, leaving a temporary ripple before the biomass closes up perfectly. Yet they aren't completely mindless automatons. The file notes that they retain fragmented memories and motor functions from their original host. An infected human might still know how to operate a keypad, open a secure door, or mimic the voice of a loved one crying out for help from the darkness. And all the while, their bodies continuously emit that pale, beautiful, terrifying blue bioluminescence. But humanity is not entirely defenseless. Every monster has a weakness. For SCP-9613, that weakness is light. Specifically, prolonged exposure to concentrated black light. When an infected entity or a raw culture of the algae is bombarded with UV light for a period ranging from 3 to 11 minutes, a dramatic transformation occurs. The vivid cobalt blue begins to darken. It shifts, curdling into a deep, rust-colored crimson. This altered state is designated SCP-9613-R, the red stage. In this red state, the anomaly loses all mobility. Its rapid reproduction grinds to a halt. It becomes stagnant, dormant, and seemingly dead. But most notably, SCP-9613-R becomes an apex predator to its former self. If you introduce a sample of this red, dormant biomass to an active, thriving blue colony, the red algae will aggressively attack the blue stage, neutralizing it through an unknown, hyper-aggressive biochemical mechanism. The Foundation, ever pragmatic, has weaponized this. They actively cultivate vats of the red stage biomass, keeping it on standby as their primary method for large-scale containment and cleanup. They use the monster's corpse to fight its living reflection. To truly understand the speed and relentless nature of this anomaly, we have to look at the official Foundation test logs. These reports highlight just how quickly a controlled environment can devolve into absolute chaos. Let's look at test log 9613-14. The subject was an ordinary Atlantic salmon. The exposure type, direct immersion into a live SCP-9613 culture. The results were instantaneous. The salmon became fully infected within just 18 seconds. The moment the fusion completed, the subject didn't swim normally. It immediately began violently attacking the reinforced containment glass. It slammed its head against the barrier with such ferocity that its own biological structure sustained massive impact damage. Yet it didn't care. It didn't feel pain. At 2 minutes post-infection, something impossible happened. The salmon partially dissolved its own physical form, liquefying its body to pass directly through a 12-centimeter solid titanium divider, entering an adjacent tank. By minute 4, the SCP-9613 biomass had entirely consumed all non-pyrite material within the testing chamber. The sensors were failing. The walls were dissolving. Left with no choice, the researchers activated the emergency blacklight exposure. At 7 minutes of continuous UV bombardment, the fish's luminescence finally shifted from blue to red. The subject ceased all movement, freezing into a solid crimson mass. Later, when researchers introduced a sample of this newly created SCP-9613-R into a fresh, active blue stage sample, the red biomass completely neutralized the active algae within 42 seconds. A definitive victory, but a terrifying display of how fast the blue tide moves. But what happens when the subject isn't a fish? What happens when it's one of us? Let's turn to test log 9613 to 31. The subject was D8821. The exposure type was altered to test vulnerability to airborne vectors. Aerosolized SCP-9613 particles pumped into a sealed isolation chamber. Initially, for the first few seconds, the D-class subject displayed absolutely no symptoms. He walked around the room, breathing normally, unaware of the microscopic horror entering his lungs. At 14 seconds, the first physical signs appeared. A faint, glowing blue luminescence began to seep from his tear ducts and beneath his fingernails. The algae was already substituting his fluids. At 38 seconds, behavioral override took hold. Subject D8821 stopped pacing. He turned to the heavy containment wall and began repeatedly striking his own head against the surface. He wasn't screaming in pain. He was vocalizing a single, chilling sentence over and over again. It wants deeper water. At 1 minute and 22 seconds, the subject's lower limbs began to lose cohesion. He partially liquefied, his body melting downward, dripping through the floor drainage systems, despite the fact that the steel drains had been completely sealed and locked down for the experiment. Emergency blacklight systems were immediately activated, bathing the room in intense UV radiation. The recovered biomass eventually entered the dormant red stage transformation after 9 grueling minutes of continuous exposure. When the medical teams entered the room in their pyrite-lined suits, they found absolutely no viable human tissue remaining. D8821 was entirely gone, replaced by a puddle of stagnant, dark crimson sludge. The file concludes with 2 highly classified addenda that reveal the true, existential dread behind this entity. In Addendum 9613A, lead researcher Dr. Elias Shaw submitted a chilling observation after reviewing hours of infection footage. He wrote, "Most parasites hijack a host because they need mobility. They need a vehicle to spread their spores or to find food. SCP-9613 doesn't need hosts at all. It can eat steel. It can walk through walls. It infects things simply because it likes them alive." Think about the implications of that statement. The blue tide doesn't possess a simple biological urge to survive. It possesses a sadistic, alien intent. It seeks out living consciousness, wraps itself around it, and forces it to watch as its body melts into the sea. Following this realization, a formal request was made to reclassify SCP-9613 from Keter to Apollyon, a designation reserved for anomalies that cannot be contained, and that represent an inevitable end-of-the-world scenario. The O5 Council denied the request, but only barely. The denial is pending the continued viability of the SCP-9613-R deployment systems. As long as our vats of red algae can kill the blue, the Foundation can pretend they are in control. But that control is a razor-thin illusion. In Addendum 9613B, a proposal was put forward to weaponize the red stage biomass, to use it as a scorched earth weapon against other hostile, uncontainable anomalous entities. The proposal was rejected unanimously by the Overseer Council. Advanced computer simulations indicated a 73% probability that deploying the red stage on a large scale would trigger an accidental, irreversible ecological collapse of the world's oceans. If the red algae mutates, or if it runs out of blue algae to eat, what will it turn on next? The terrifying reality of this threat was proven in testing Lab 22. A single, microscopic, dormant blue stage cell somehow survived the standard sterilization process. It was an oversight smaller than a speck of dust. Within less than 6 minutes, that single cell multiplied, went active, and entirely consumed a multi-million-dollar submarine drone, leaving nothing behind but an empty tank and a glowing blue stain. The Foundation keeps its eyes on the stars, watching for cosmic horrors. They build massive underground bunkers to hide from terrestrial monsters. But perhaps the greatest threat to our world has been right here all along, sloshing against our shores, waiting for the lights to go out. The next time you stand on a beach at night and you see the waves glowing with that beautiful, serene bioluminescent light, don't walk closer, don't touch the water, because it might just want you alive.